All right, so thank you guys for joining. My name is Alexandra Valdez. I am the SGA president, and I'm here joined by Carlos Becerra, who is our associate vice president of governmental relations for FIU, and Dr. Alejandra Para, who works at the Office of International Students and Services and Scholarships, as well as Eric Feldman in the Office of FIU and DC. So we have a lot of things that we want to talk about today, touching base on governmental relations and just pressing topics that are important to our students. So the floor is yours. Thank you all for joining. And if you have any questions that you would like to ask, feel free to raise your hand or ask them in the chat, but it'll be an open discussion for everyone.
Cool. Thank you, Madam President. And I want to thank student government and everyone for dialing in today. Having been myself a SGA president in the past, I know that the important role you're playing. And hopefully we can cover a lot of good issues today. There's four real hot issues that I wanted to touch on as far as what's hot in Washington. We want to start with an issue that has evolved this week on international students, and thank Dr. Para for joining us. She's short on time, so we'll start with that. But
thank you.
International students, DACA, what's developing there, future stimulus funding, Pell Grant issues, other research priorities that we're advocating for. So embedded within each of those points, I want to make sure we touch on what you all as students and as student government can do. And then before we end, I definitely wanted to give my colleague Eric a chance to talk about the programming and other activities happening here in Washington from the student perspective with our talent lab. But first off, let me thank student government also, because our team in Washington wouldn't be as strong and as robust if it wasn't for your support over the years, and including the current administration. So thank you. So as many of you have probably heard, and we're curious to hear your questions, I'll kick off this topic and then I'll pitch it off to Alejandra. But this week, the Department of Homeland Security announced, in essence, a change to previous flexibilities that they had allowed our F and M student visa holders. Some of the basics are, there's always been a requirement, and this is a good example of even when you're advocating in a lot of these issues, sometimes every week you learn. There's always been a maximum requirement, a maximum of only 3 credits that any international student can take after obtaining their visa. What happened in the midst of the coronavirus pandemic is that in the spring, DHS gave flexibility to those students and institutions to allow them obviously to take more than 3 credits online, considering that the entire world was going online. They extended that flexibility in the summer, and what they announced this week is that in essence for the fall, that flexibility would not be there. That's the gist, and clearly the 2 key points are that students attending schools operating entirely online may not take a full online course load and remain in the US. The other additional point is that students attending the schools adopting a hybrid model, as is the case with FIU, that'll be one of our key tracks, will be allowed to take more than 1 class. So they're still showing some flexibility, but it left open how many. And not in the actual memo, but from what we've seen from news reports and Acting Secretary Wolf, he clearly said that they would be able to take up to 3 courses. They also direct FIU and other institutions to reissue all of our I-20 forms. So we're going to be busy doing that prior to the start of the semester. So that's what we know. I'm going to let Alejandra speak on what FIU's actual plans are, and I invite you, and we invite you to actually read President Rosenberg's memo from earlier in the week. She'll cover what we're actually, what our plans are. Our biggest concern is obviously, once again, if indeed there is a disruption to the entire environment as there was in the spring, we are as concerned, as all of our students in that case. But I think based on our plans that we are looking out for our students. So Alejandra, why don't you touch on the 4 key points of what we're actually doing now?
Absolutely, and thank you so much, and thank you so much for being so respectful of my time. I've been called to a meeting with all the state universities to continue the discussion on this. And Carlos, you're absolutely right. This message and this update from USCIS has disrupted all our plans. As you know, during the spring and the summer, we were very flexible with our international students. And as international students, their responsibility is to be full-time students, okay? And the rule is that they have to be registered for at least 12 credits, and only 3 of those credits can be online per semester. So you said it right, they can take 3 online courses during the academic year. So per semester, they're allowed only 3 credits online. Which means that they need to be registered for 3 face-to-face courses. So now what's happening is that USCIS is going back to their initial requirements, which meant students need to be on campus, they need to take face-to-face courses, but we are faced with the reality that FIU has, has had to adapt to the new reality and to have many courses online, many courses in a remote fashion, and not so many face-to-face and in hybrid mode. So our number 1 course of action is, and we have a meeting today at 1:30, is to decide, is to encourage programs, colleges, academic affairs departments in the colleges to try and find a way of making or offering more hybrid and face-to-face courses as possible, and always taking into account, the measures that we have to take when it comes to the pandemic reality. So that's our number 1 priority, to make sure that academic affairs is working with the colleges to find solutions to offer our students. Now, the new update does not really clarify how many face-to-face courses they need to be registered for. So all the Florida institutions have decided to go with at least showing presence on campus through one course, so that one course that they can register for. So they could take 1 course in hybrid fashion and 3 online courses. They could do that. Or 1 course in hybrid, 1 course face-to-face, and 2 online, and they're fine, okay? So they will have a solution. The president's message on Monday, if I'm not mistaken, or Tuesday, it was on Tuesday, right? Tuesday, yeah, the president's message on Tuesday was very clear that we are going to be working to support our students and to make sure that they do not suffer any negative consequence. The number 2 strategy that we're working on is, of course, being there in our ISSS office to provide all the support services that we have through our virtual office, through our virtual appointments, and also providing them with instructions on the process that they will need to follow immigration-wise if they decide that they want to stay home and sit out the, the fall semester, and that's totally okay. Immigration-wise, we have solutions, we have processes that we're going to be putting in place. So I would say that these are the 2 main strategies that we're going to be utilizing to support our international students, because we deal and we are the guardians of their immigration status, and we need to make sure that we're not leading them to mistakes that may harm them in the future. Now, if the university decides at some point during the semester that we need to go online because of the pandemic, then that is something that may potentially affect our international students, because the new update establishes that students will need to leave the country if the university goes online, which, in the past, that was the reality. If you're taking all your courses online, you're going to have to leave the country. But the student had the choice to fix that. Now he won't have the choice to fix that. So that's something that, honestly, I don't even want to think about it. That moment, if we have to tell a student that they have to leave. I do believe that these things may change, may have a solution towards the end of the semester. Number one, the pandemic may get better. There are other versions of this update that is, maybe by the time this comes, they may have changed their minds, that the students will not have to leave. So I'm very hopeful that we'll have a positive answer. All this does not really affect DACA students, okay? I just received a couple of messages from DACA students saying, does this affect us? No, it has nothing to do with your situation that is already in shambles as we speak. So no, don't worry about it. No, not for DACA students, okay? I'm not sure if I'm missing anything. Carlos, anything else that you'd like me to?
No, I think you hit it. The others I'll add, and then we'll open for any questions before you have to go. But there is a court case. So a few days, the day after, both Harvard and MIT, and late last night, the University of California joined a lawsuit, seeking, in essence, an injunction, an applying of the brakes. So that's the most immediate next step that might happen externally, because if there is an injunction, and we hope welcome to the court process, that then puts a long-term hold. The administration could also come back and say it needs to be accelerated, but there is a court case, and I'll speak to it after we open up for questions, but there is advocacy, and there is actual individual students picking up the phone, sending an email. Unfortunately, you can't visit an office these days, and making sure you're raising the volume on this issue to our members of Congress, to anyone you might happen to know of, or corporate leaders that happen to have an ear of the White House. This is the 2020 campaign year, and I'll touch on some of those points a little later, but so there is advocacy in making this a bigger issue that is uncomfortable for the political leaders to change course, as Alejandra mentioned. So before she has to go, any questions for Alejandra, for Dr. Parra?
If I may add, what you said about advocacy is that we've already gotten word from NAFSA to start working on advocating for, going against this new regulation, or this new update. FIU is very involved with state international education organizations and with the national one. NAFSA always working with Carlos in Washington, and we are in the middle of creating a correspondence to our representatives to tell them how much this is affecting our international student population. And I think that the other thing that I'd like to put out there is that students are panicking. Students are not reading the regulation, with the positive eye, because we are finding solutions for them. We are doing our best, and we will protect them to our, of course, to their highest capability, for them not to be affected. So working with academic affairs is key. And I have received very positive response from the College of Architecture, the College of Engineering, CASE. They're already working to look for opportunities for these students, okay? So things are looking positive. It's just that students are panicking. And we had a forum yesterday for the whole university community. And because it was for the whole university community, the students, the international students, were very unhappy because we weren't answering their questions. So it is not public yet, but we are, with the Office of the President, we will be holding a town hall meeting for international students. Okay, so I'm hoping that this will answer all their questions, and this will appease their anxiety.
And I can report on what else the university is doing. We have been advocating since, well, we can rewind the clock, and believe it or not, many more immigration issues have been hot this spring in the middle of Corona. And I want to thank Dr. Parra for joining us. And since day one of the pandemic, making sure our congressional offices, Republicans and Democrat, who have been supportive on both sides of the aisle, were aware of potential other changes to visa regulations. And one we can say for now has been a bit of a success was with the OPT certification for students that do graduate and stick around longer. But this week we have already gotten for now 3 for certain, and we're working on the rest of them. Members of Congress, Murkisel Powell, Wasserman Schultz, and Shirley Wilson, but definitely Donna Shalala, to sign congressional letters. There's about 5 or 6 congressional dear colleague letters, as they are referred to. So we made sure that they had, once again, our stats. We have 4,200 international students. We have about 1,100 or so expected to start in the fall, Alejandra?
Yes. Yes.
The question is what happens with them at their embassies as they're trying to be processed. But also with our Republican members. And I want to make sure that everyone knows that you also have friendly offices on these issues. They know the value of international education, period, but to Florida and to South Florida. But if I can recommend to you all, and we can circulate contact information, in addition to hearing from Dr. Parra and myself, I think it's important that a lot of our key offices hear directly from international students, to hear what the actual case is, what the, not only frustration, because they get that, but what would happen in an individual's case should they need to mid-semester pack up and go. And we hope that's not even the case, but so the politics are as they are. Our Republican members do have a lot more open doors with the White House and DHS, because that's a Republican administration. So we're also working that angle as well. So I want to make sure we're clear there. But I think, I don't know how student government wants to follow up on, but now is the time to make sure that some key critical check-ins are happening in chats over Zoom like this with our key congressional offices. They are friendly, but not that they get tired. They probably get tired of hearing from me every few days.
Yeah.
You all, the testimony that you can provide is priceless. So we'll circulate with Madam President a list of key contacts that those that want to tackle this, and I recommend and I underscore and I say we need that if we're going to be effective. You all check in with those offices as well. Any other questions on this issue? No? Okay.
Yes, I just saw a comment about someone saying, I'm so glad about OPT. Yes, we're very glad that nothing happened to OPT. And I just want to clarify for those graduating, we have students in the audience, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
How many? Because I'm not able to see, I'm on my phone.
Okay.
Do you know how many?
20 some, right?
That's great. That's great. Yeah. So if anyone in the audience is graduating this semester, you need to be applying for OPT. It's business as usual. Just go ahead and apply for OPT. For those who are not graduating, but of course are planning to graduate in the fall or in the spring, you need to start applying for OPT at least 90 days before the end of your classes. So go on our website, take a look at all the information on our processes. But I mean, the bottom line is OPT was not affected. And thanks to the help of all the advocacy that I think every school in the nation did. And, you know, advocacy really works.
There's one other vehicle I want to make sure we're all clear, because as you reach out to our members, Congress at this point will likely pass another stimulus bill based on the economic crisis. So that stimulus bill is expected to be sometime in the next 2 weeks, end of July, 1st of August. It is very likely that there is going to be an item added to that bill, a rider as it's known, to basically restrict DHS from carrying out this new regulation. Congress has the power not only of the purse, but they can pass laws. And the administration has to follow laws. So that is a key message, because Congress has, in addition to just signing letters and trying to check in with, if the Republicans trying to advocate with the White House and our friends there, their friends there, can actually pass a law. So there is a vehicle and a way for Congress to take action.
Great. Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Thank
Well,
you,
I'm
Dr.
sorry, I have 1 minute to transition to my next meeting, but
Okay.
thank you so much for having me.
We
Okay.
appreciate it.
All right. Thank you.
So that's that
Bye.
issue. Let me touch on a couple of key other points, and then we'll just open it up. Obviously, in addition to this, what is the bigger context of what's happening in DC now is we've got coronavirus and potential future stimulus funding tied to there. We were expecting a presidential election to be underway. That colors everything and puts everything on a different in a different dynamic. We're monitoring because of how it impacts our community, but issues of equity and this national dialogue that's now taken root in many good ways, police reform issues. So that's all happening. But I wanted to make sure you got to start with international students as kind of what's hottest this week. But still out there, and another pending action both on the side of the administration and Congress is DACA. You all probably follow the Supreme Court case. The Supreme Court case did not say that DACA was legal. As a matter of fact, in their opinions, they actually point out that there's probably enough legal grounding that it wasn't legal. It was in how the Trump administration opted to end it. That's all that court case was about. And I raise that in such a way because I want to make sure you all know that this might have been a quick, nice win for the day, but that does not settle the issue at all. The next step expected is that the administration now is at a position to either decide to try to cancel it again in the right way, in the proper way, according to the Administrative Procedures Act. Do they allow new enrollees to the program as they're deciding or not? Renewals have never been a concern because those have continued even as the larger question has remained. Does Congress take action? That would be as we have always said, that is the only way to solve this once and for all, is for Congress to actually pass a solution. And they have not, for various political reasons and larger immigration issues. But we're following that because obviously that impacts so many of our students, alumni, some faculty and administration. So that's there. Future stimulus funding, I did mention it in the course of the international students issue, but universities still do not know, and neither do we, what the long-term financial impact will be of not only coronavirus and what we've lived through in the last 2 semesters, but the year ahead. And in Florida, cases are going up now. What's that going to affect? Tourism, the economy, other industries, day-to-day economic engines. That ultimately impacts the state of Florida's budget, our budget, etc. In addition to lives and lives being lost, unfortunately, and lives being impacted. So it is likely, as I said, that Congress will pass another stimulus bill. We are, along with all the universities, pursuing additional funding for universities generally, and in particular, additional emergency aid grants for our students, because we saw that we basically ran out of our CARES Act emergency aid grants for students. We're now trying to find creative ways to still meet the needs of students that weren't met through CARES, but that's there. So future stimulus funding. This week, as a matter of fact, I joined this discussion by signing off from congressional hearings on the regular appropriations budget of the government, because this week they are actually marking up and beginning to mark up the actual budget. So one of the top issues that concern students is Pell Grants and the amount that is budgeted for those. Currently, the maximum Pell Grant, which is the marker, is $6,345. We get the based on the initial drafts, that will likely go up, but we're monitoring that. And separate from that, there's 4 or 5 other key research priorities that we're involved in making sure that our members of Congress are increasing dollars in key budgets throughout the federal government, at the National Science Foundation, at NIH, the Department of Defense, Department of Homeland Security, Department of State, et cetera, that all impact a lot of the research areas and centers that you know of on campus. So that's a snapshot of kind of what's hot now and what we're active on. I did want to segue at some point to a conversation of what you can actually do. And I think the first, if this was a class and I was giving an assignment or recommendation, it's this international student issue. Because I think there is a window here. Although the administration comes out with this new memo, I think there is an opportunity for the volume to be raised and for it to have an impact. So with that, I will open up for any key questions. Follow-up.
Hi, Carlos. This is Christian Perez here from the GPSC. How you doing?
I remember you on a previous, on the graduate student chat, right?
Yes, the OPT one.
Yes.
So I have a quick question in regards to something that's been kind of on my mind with this new international student policy change. I'm looking at the official document that FIU had sent out yesterday regards to maintaining face-to-face or hybrid classes offered. It will count towards their program of study as possible, at least one of them. In terms of international students who are PhD candidates who only have to do dissertation credits, that course is not a face-to-face course or a hybrid course. Where would that fall under this classification? Because I'm hearing some concerns from them on this.
That is a very good question. I know that I don't remember the reply, but I know that Vice President Hill and the Dean of the Graduate School replied to that on Facebook, but that's a very important question. I would circulate that immediately. I'm sure they were thinking of it. I don't have the answer for you myself, but I would recommend that you email both Dr. Cause and Dr. Parra together, and maybe even maintain Alexandra copied so that we become aware of what the answer is. So I don't have the answer for you, but you raise a very good point, and I'm sure there's a creative way to work around that. And in essence, I think that's what you're hearing from Dr. Parra. If that is to maintain the regulation, we're in the process of figuring out the most creative legal way to stick to it so that you're not affected.
Right. And if there's any other bill, petition, as the GPSC did with OPT that we can help with, we'll be glad to help with that.
Okay.
For this international student.
And I'll obviously make note of that myself on the dissertation point. But I know it came up in the chat yesterday, so I just can't remember the answer.
Thank you, Carlos.
What else?
I will say that anybody who had questions answered in the chat, they're creating an FAQ sheet, and some of those questions will be posted, and we'll get those out to anyone who is looking for them later as well, once I get them.
Thank you, Eric, for those emails. Eric added the...
I have an unscripted and unvetted question that I don't know if you are prepared to answer.
We like those.
With our SGA.
Often being recorded.
Yeah. So with Harvard and MIT suing the administration, what goes into, I guess I'm going to ask this question abstracted from our current situation. Like, can FIU ever sue another governmental entity, or because we ourselves are governmental as a public state agency, does that never happen, or would that be very complicated?
No, it can happen. Look at the DACA case, was led by UCLA.
Mm-hmm.
Harvard is a public institution, by the way.
Harvard?
Yeah, part of the, they carry themselves out, but yeah, they're in the mix. So it can happen. Is it complicated? Yes. And is there going to be, are there political issues tied to that? 100%, but it can happen. Good unscripted question. What else?
I guess my question would be, as a, as a student leader, like what steps can we take to build that advocacy aspect for this pressing like topic right now? So obviously like everything is on, changing as we go through the week, but how, like, do you advise that us reaching out to our legislators is like the best approach, or like is there a certain like campaign that we can start to kickstart like this advocacy perspective? Like what do you recommend for students to do?
Yeah, you gave two great things you can do immediately. If no one has done it this week, that would be a crime. If the week ends and not one FIU international student or someone representing FIU international student does not check in, so immediately when we hang up here, I'll make sure you have those education contacts, because that needs to happen. That's a given. And this is, I'm assuming I'm speaking mostly to a student government leadership crowd. Let this be your first knock at the door, but not your last. You all are representing many other students. You need to already have that dialogue with these key education staffers. And that's something that you can really transform about what student government does. So that's that. You mentioned a campaign. That would be interesting. Potentially starting, I mean, it is in our middle name, some type of campaign on behalf of FIU students on these issues are all, it's a cluster of issues. It's not just this issue. It's the visa issue. It's COVID and the complications that are arising from that. It's OPT. OPT may likely come back. It's not that we've solved it forever. We're excited that it wasn't included in the last round of potential changes. So we're under an era of being concerned about foreign influence in our universities. And let me be clear, there are bad actors, and there's enough examples of foreign students, that do not good things when they arrive on our campuses, as far as research and circulating those back to other foreign governments, etc. That happens. You should feel good that universities, I think, in the last few years have really ratcheted up their processes and their vigilance on a lot of these issues. But that shouldn't kill, and this is where a campaign would come in, don't kill the baby with the bathwater, the value of what international students are to universities and America. One of my key, and I'll bury you with stats, but 22% of Fortune 500 companies were founded by immigrants who arrived here as an international student, etc. So, and there's data out there, and that you can dig into yourselves, that international students that end up becoming entrepreneurs and stay in this country and end up becoming American, guess what? They end up creating, these companies end up creating jobs for native-born Americans, etc. So, but that second point of potentially launching a campaign, do it.
You'll be hearing from me soon.
Okay, we will be your advisors in that sense.
Yes, thank you.
Other questions?
Christopher Lugo here. I have a question. I'm an international student myself, right? Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm an international student myself. What documents do you recommend for us persons who are outside of USA, and when coming back, for us to carry so we don't encounter any problems by US customs? So any additional documents that you recommend us taking?
So Christopher, to be honest, I'm not the best person to answer that. That would be the International Students Office and Dr. Parra. So you have her email in the chat feature to specifically ask that specific question. I would imagine, as Michelle mentioned, that would be included in an FAQ that they're in the process of preparing. Just my role in particular, I'm on our governmental relations team, so I represent the interests of the university and our students before Congress, before the administration, in trying to impact their policies. So, but the specific answer to your question, I do not have, unfortunately.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. You have her email there, alejandra.para?
Yes, sir.
Perfect. And where are you from, Christopher? Nope. Okay.
I think Christopher's from Dominican Republic.
Oh, I didn't hear the question. What was the question?
Where you're from?
Oh, I'm from Dominican Republic, but I'm living in Turks and Caicos.
Okay.
So I have a question for you, Carlos.
Yes.
Since FIU shut down in March, I am aware that the current international students were able to stay on campus. How is that situation looking like now?
Once again, I cannot answer that just because I'm not involved in those plans, but we can get you that answer for certain.
Yeah, because I would like to definitely be in contact with at least that target of students because they're on campus and we can get more info from them.
Okay. Michelle, from a student, might you happen to have any information there?
We can ask Andrew Naylor and Joe Pollock of once they have who is coming back to campus, if they can identify what the strategy is, we can ask that of them.
That's a very important question.
Carlos, I'll jump in. These have kind of inspired a question I know is more up your alley, but I didn't think about till I heard these questions. When it comes to international students participating in advocacy, one of the key principles of advocacy is going to the elected officials you are a constituent of. In the case of non-citizens, how does a non-citizen best frame their advocacy? So if they live in a member's district but they cannot vote for that member, does that matter to the member? Does that need to be addressed in whatever the letter to the congressperson says, or are there any implications for that?
That's a good question, but first, acknowledge my error. Harvard is not a public institution, my bad.
Yeah,
I was confused.
a screenshot of that to send you. I was Googling this, but since you bring that up, I found a really interesting article that opines that Harvard and other schools, while they get so many tax breaks on their endowments, that they get more public money than some public schools do. So that's interesting sidebar from that fact check.
And the reason why I was thrown off is they do attend and they're active with our public universities coalition, because Harvard is a juggernaut when it comes to research, and so many of their research initiatives involve other universities, in particular in Massachusetts, and so that's why I was thrown off. My bad. I stand corrected. Always admit your error. To your point, no, there's no. I think it's framed in a sense that you ground your advocacy to the institution you're attending. You're clear that you are not a citizen of the U.S. You're an international student. But that shouldn't stop you from advocating, because I don't know the stat today, but a good chunk of international students will become American citizens. But you're not there to talk in a time horizon. You're here to, provide testimony on the actual issue at hand of why there's value to international students, to institutions, in these communities. And typically you're going to be speaking to members that are from Florida, and all politics is local. And we have a list of who's RSVP'd for this call, correct? Yeah. So Alexandra, I would love to give you 10 key bullets that frame the economic impact of international students, the jobs that are supported. Any politician and any elected official loves to protect and create jobs, the jobs that are supported. So if you don't even care about these individuals, they do, and I want to be clear about that. What is the economic impact, and what do these individuals mean to our communities? Because if that were to be reduced over time, that would make an impact. So, did I answer your question, Eric?
Yeah. I can share my slide really quick if you want. Maybe some comes up with a question.
So what's the Washington Post saying about Harvard? That they are?
So they're not public, but they're saying that these large endowments that these schools have get so many tax breaks that if you consider a tax break as a public expense, they get more public money than some public schools do, which is an interesting perspective on that.
In many circles, they're treated as such. So maybe a good segue to you, Eric. As far as, like, as I mentioned, your student government, and actually your student, us students are helping through the activities and service fees support a lot of the activities that are happening here in Washington. So Eric, why don't you give a snapshot on what's happening this summer?
Yeah, and so like my slide matches your TV background.
Nice.
There,
We planned that.
our new version of Bright and Colorful Panther Pride. A super cool thing about FIU and DC, for those who don't realize yet, is that in one team, in one space, one team, we handle the governmental relations side. So you're hearing Carlos talk about actually working with federal agencies and members of Congress to represent our students and our institutions' interests in terms of policies. The Talent Lab, which is a program within FIU and DC, same team, same department, is here to train and support students and alumni in advocacy and for success in both internships and careers in Washington and in government and policy making. So the Talent Lab, and we have our own site there, talentlab.fiu.edu, consists of fly-in seminars. Some of the SGA colleagues on this call have been on previous fly-ins. We have done and will continue to do virtual fly-ins until it becomes safe to do in-person fly-ins again. So there'll be no gap in the opportunity to participate in fly-ins, some of which will be happening coming up soon and on different topics. And we're definitely going to be doing something near the November election that focuses on the election in the format of a 3-day seminar. Internships, we have, even during the current situation, about 35 FIU students who are interning with DC-based organizations, most of those virtual, and we just launched our brand new Hamilton Scholars program, which is a new academic semester program that includes a course here in DC, and that will be available both in person and virtually. So nothing is ever not available from FIU and DC because of the need to remain in Miami or reduce travel. And our impact series is the professional development events that we consistently do. And on that note, we've done a bunch of cool stuff this summer already, and I've updated the Talent Lab website with all of the videos of past Talent Lab events from this summer. So just this week, we had one on voting rights with this great panel that you see here. You can watch that whole thing. We've had a session about careers in Congress with 3 of our alumni who work for members of Congress. We've had our expert on George Washington from Mount Vernon up here in Virginia talk about how George Washington might have handled the coronavirus pandemic and the difference in size and scope of the federal government from Washington's times and now. So tons of great content there, but there will also be more. We're going to release more details on our next event soon. I have some planning on it to do, but I've already opened up this link to pre-register for July 22nd. The panel discussion will explore some intersections of law and business and global learning with some of our DC-based lawyer alumni, and I think it'll be great for pre-law audience and for the SGA audience, but the themes that it discusses will be of interest to all students as well. So look out for our Twitter and our emails for more information on that, but save the date for that. We also have 2 pressing congressional internship deadlines. Please work with me if you're planning on applying to these. I'd love to help you with your resume and cover letter and help you determine the best member for you based on your political leanings. But we know that Debbie Wasserman Schultz's office has a deadline of July 15th. They've said that'll probably be some hybrid sort of format with some interns in person and some virtual, or interns doing some combination of both things. They're not automatically paid, but they have stipends that are available based on need, and our team also has scholarships that are available. So we'll make sure that you're financially supported on that one. And Mario Diaz-Balart's office, slightly later deadline on July 24th. Those will be fully virtual and are paid. I've recently tweeted about both of those in the past 24 hours. So if you go to our Twitter page, you can find links to both of those, and also follow us on Twitter while you're there. But then again, make sure that I know what you're thinking and can help you with those internships as well, including congressional internships in the future as well. Every semester we work to make sure all of our South Florida offices have FIU interns.
Questions on the talent lab in our programming? Our message there is just get involved. Especially we're here to help get you those awesome internships and jobs. And so, no other questions? No? Okay, well, guess what? The Harvard debate continues. Here's part of the mix too. They're actually they're a private corporation, but they're enshrined in the Massachusetts Constitution. So it's actually part of their state constitution, written by John Adams, and you can read some other stuff there. Actually known as the University at Cambridge. So, fun facts. So I think part of the answer is, depending on when they're being asked, they probably consider themselves public. So they show up to my meetings, that I know. All right. Well, thank you. I think this is always good. And for those, I know 3 particular questions were asked that I do not have the answer for. If Alejandra was still on, she would have had the answer. But let's make sure we get you those answers.
Yes, Carlo. If I can add something really quick.
Yeah.
I know that even though you're marvelous, you obviously do not know all the answers, you know.
Obviously not.
Exactly, of course, which is totally understandable. So if any of you here would like us to facilitate like any communication with Dr. Para or the Office of ISSS in general, please send your questions my way or Alex's way. I'm going to drop our emails in the chat. That way we can find those answers out for you.
In particular, Christopher. In particular, I remember that question, the housing question as well. And you heard it here first, there will be a follow-up town hall meeting just on international students. So I think it's important to be on that.
We'll get more information on that from Dr. Para as well. And obviously we'll keep you all updated on that, and we'll make sure to post it on our socials and send that out to students. But I wanted to thank Carlos and Eric, and obviously Dr. Para had to leave, but I really appreciate you joining us and keeping us informed and educated. And yeah, till next time, I'll keep in touch with both of you, because I do have a lot of things that I want to work on, an advocacy aspect. So I appreciate you joining us.
Wonderful. All right, everyone. Have a great day. Bye.
Thank you so much.
Have a good one.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.